name is Rachel and I am here today to talk about 2017, my favourite books of the year and a bit of a review of the year basically. 2017 was a kind of good reading year for me. I have read some books that I thoroughly enjoyed and that's good. But it wasn't my favourite reading year. I definitely thought the year before was a better reading year and I want to make a lot of changes for this year. So yes, so I have a few statistics from my reading in 2017. So in total I read 98 books. I did not hit the 100 Goodreads goal. I was pushing myself to beat it and I sort of realised on New Year's Eve I was at the house of some of the friends of the family that I work for and I was just having such a lovely time, but I was feeling stressed and that like I needed to read and I just realised like just don't hit the goal. It's made you uncomfortable all year. Just don't do it. So I didn't and I feel fine about it, so that's good. So 98 books. Those 98 books translate to 22,084 pages. My average rating for the year was 3.7, which is quite good actually. It's not amazing, especially because I'm quite generous with my ratings. Like, if a book makes me happy, I will probably give it 5, even if I had some problems with the writing. So, yeah, that's not amazing, but it's not terrible. At least it's not like 2. So, yeah. The shortest book I read in 2017 was The Hungry Ghost Festival by Jen Campbell, and the longest book I read was It by Stephen King. Yeah, they're like my statistics for the year, and then I wanted to talk about some of my favourite books. Now, I've only picked 8 this year. I could have picked 10, I could have added some to the list, but everything else I had issue with enough to not put it as any type of like favourite book of the year, and I didn't want to just make an arbitrary number of 10 when actually they didn't, you know, the last 2 wouldn't be up to the standard of the other 8. So I decided that I would just go with 8. So some things to say first, this does not include graphic novels. I made a video about my graphic year in review because I had read quite a lot of graphic novels this year. I think it was around 28 or something. So I decided to do that in a separate video because I just wanted to talk about graphic novels on their own. So yes, I will link that down below if you want to watch it, but obviously they're not included. If I actually had to say my favourite books out of the year of everything, it would be Isabel Greenberg's The Encyclopedia of Revelia and The 100 Nights of Hero. That would top everything. But yeah, for this one I'm just talking about novels and non-fiction and that sort of thing. And then I also had a few honourable mentions. These are books that I adored this year but just didn't make the list. They just weren't up to the standard of the others that did make the list. The first one is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. Also Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I had a lot of problems with this novel in terms of the plot and other stuff, but in terms of the OCD representation, I think it's a phenomenal book and definitely hold it quite highly in my reading this year. Another book similar is Moonrise by Sarah Crossan. It was just a book that I thought was needed to kind of try and show people how bad the situation is. So I loved that. And the last 2 are the Han Kang books I read this year. So I read The Vegetarian and The White Book by Han Kang. I enjoyed The White Book more, I think, but both of them were fantastic. I really enjoy Han Kang's writing style. And yeah, they were brilliant. I'm hoping to read Human Acts this year, maybe do a bit of an author spotlight on Han Kang because I just find her very interesting. So yes, they are all my honourable mentions that didn't quite make the list but I very much enjoyed. So yeah, let's get to my favourite books of the year now. So I'm going to start at number 8 and work my way down to my favourite book of the year. So number 8 is one that I didn't ever expect to be in a favourite books list for the year, and it is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I enjoy contemporaries occasionally, but not a lot, and I also don't enjoy a lot of YA anymore, especially angsty, romancy ones. And so I thought I would enjoy this book. I was reading it because it had LGBTQ representation and that is something that's important to me, and so I decided to read it. And actually, it's one of my favourite books of the year now. I think it's because one of the things that I find the most aggravating in my life is that being with a girl is never ever treated like it's normal. If you hold hands, people stare at you. Whenever there are people in films or TV shows that are gay, they're always side characters, they always get killed. Just not great for people who are in same-sex relationships. And the thing that I loved about this book is that it treated the love story in it was treated exactly as a straight couple. I love the way that they talk to each other, the flirtation, the way they hold hands, the way they make out, all those they're the things that you never ever see. And yeah, it just means a lot to me, this book, because it treated a same-sex relationship and romance exactly as a straight romance would have been treated in a contemporary, and I think that's why it's held so highly for me. I didn't love the writing style, some of it was repetitive, it was nothing special in that regard, but for what it represented, I just loved it. So that is number 8 for me. Number 7 was The Gustav Sonata by Rose Tremaine. Now, I read this book because I was moving to Switzerland and it is a book set in Switzerland. And so I heard about it on BookTube and was like, oh my god, I'm moving to Switzerland soon. I'm going to read a book about Switzerland, get me excited. And I am so glad that I did. Again, this has some homosexual themes in it, which I quite enjoyed. And it basically follows this little boy who is friends with another little boy when he's younger, and then it kind of follows them through their lives, and it's just such a beautiful story, and it has so many amazing themes in it. And I think one of the things that I loved the most is the writing style is just, I just really got on board with it. It was brilliant. So yeah, that's number 7. For number 6, we have Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. I adored this poetry collection. I think it's one of my favourite poetry collections of all time. I just love the themes that Rupi Kaur examines in Milk and Honey, things like sexual abuse and feminism and being a woman and just amazing things. And she is an amazing poet. I read The Sun and Her Flowers this year as well. I did thoroughly enjoy it, but I don't think it was quite at the standard of Milk and Honey for me. But yes, again, did enjoy it a lot. And then the next 5 are my there's a definite divide, and these were my favourite books, and to the point where I didn't know what order to put them in. Especially the top 2 books could really be interchangeable, but one is just a little bit higher than the other. So for number 5, we have On Writing by Stephen King. This is Stephen King's memoir about writing, his craft of writing, a bit about his life. He's had drug addictions, and he wrote about that, about alcoholism, about how he became a writer, like entering short story competitions and all that sort of stuff. And then he discusses like things that have happened to him since. He was in a very tragic car accident that had nearly took his life a few years ago, so he writes about that. And I love Stephen King because he is very, very to the point. He never treats being a writer as if it's a club that you have to earn your way into. He's very much like, everyone's a writer, just go practice some writing, do some writing every day, you're a writer, mate. Like, he is just so inclusive and so helpful, and there's no kind of thing of like being better than other people or trying to make it sound more complicated than it is, which I actually think is quite common and something I really dislike. And I love Stephen King anyway. I am such a big fan of his. Some of his, like The Shining and Misery, are up there with some of my favourite books of all time. So I just think he is a phenomenal writer anyway, and so reading a book all about him and his craft and how he writes was, yes, helpful for me because I want to be a writer, but also just lovely to get kind of an insight into someone who is one of my favourite authors of all time. So yes, that was fantastic. The next one we have is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. I read this book, I think, quite early on in the year, and I went to a talk by Yaa Gyasi in Manchester as well about the book, and it was just very, very, very enjoyable. I think the thing that I really loved about this book is how innovative it was. The way that this book basically takes a family and it follows the two branches of the family, following two sisters and how their line goes, and every chapter is the next generation, like a person from it. And oh my god, I loved it, and I was always searching for like who they were related to, and they always had these like little things, like a little memento of fire or of water or all these things, and I adored it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It definitely deserved the hype that it got, and it's one of the most beautiful covers of a book that I've ever seen. I just adore Yaa Gyasi. She's definitely an author for me now, and I can't wait till she releases something else. Then book number 3 is The Good Immigrant, and this is a essay collection that is edited by Nikesh Shukla, and it is non-fiction. So it focuses on different minorities talking about their experience of living in Britain and being born in Britain, but how they are treated in Britain. And I just loved the idea of this book. I found it fascinating because I think that people focus a lot on what's happened in the past, and people say a lot about how things have changed now. But this book was published in 2017, and it talks about the situation for those people in their lives now. And you notice how much the situation actually isn't better and hasn't always changed. And all the people in that book, I just found what they wrote was always remarkable, and they weren't necessarily angry. A lot of them were kind of sarcastic about it, especially I remember the first essay. I can literally like rhyme it off in my head, even though I haven't read it since. He was talking about the ways that Britain commandeers language from other people and other countries and sort of uses them for their own and forgets what they mean. And he gave examples like chai tea, where chai means tea, so it's basically saying tea. Naan bread, again, naan means bread, so you're saying bread. He was talking about namaste, and just all these things, and they really stuck with me. And there are so many stories that actually just, I can remember them so vividly now. And for it to be months and months and months after I've read it and to remember such small details, it really is a sign to me that I loved this book. And yeah, it was just fantastic. I wish it could have been higher, but I just really liked the other 2 books. But this is definitely a must read for everyone, in my opinion, and it was fantastic. Book number 2, only just missing out on the top spot, is Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. So I read this during Victober this year and was absolutely blown away. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I have read Tess the D'Urbervilles in the past and did thoroughly enjoy it, but I didn't find it amazing. It wasn't ever going to be one of my favourite classics, but I enjoyed it. So I didn't know what to expect, so I kind of expected to enjoy Far From the Madding Crowd, but not quite love it the way that I did, and oh, how I loved it. It is a fantastic work of feminist fiction now, let alone at the time it was written. Like, oh my god, it's amazing. I just adore the way that Hardy writes such strong and brilliant women who stand up for themselves and have agency outside of the men in their lives. So like Bathsheba Everdeen is the protagonist. She inherits a farm from some family and she wants to keep that running, and she never says, oh, I'll marry someone or I'll sell it off to the closest man. She wants to be a success. And the minute she does this speech when she gets there, and she's like, I'm going to work harder than you guys, I'm going to get up earlier than you guys, and blah, blah, blah. And if you have a problem with me being a woman, suck it. And it's just, oh my god, I love it. I thought it was one of the best books of all time, to be honest. And it's definitely one of my new favourites. And oh yeah, I have a special place in my heart for Bathsheba Everdeen and just for Thomas Hardy. Like, to have read a second book where he plays with gender so much and women and how they're seen in society and their position. With Tess the D'Urbervilles, he does this with what is expected of a woman, and sort of the wrongs that women can do. He plays with that a lot, and you know, you feel such sympathy for Tess in Tess the Deadvilles, even though she actually, if you like look at the time and what people would have thought at the time, she isn't a sympathetic character at all. But the fact that he wrote her as one is just beautiful to me. And the same goes for Far From Madding Crowd. We have a similar character in Far From Madding Crowd to Tess Durbeyfield, actually, that I again felt such sympathy for. And I just, the whole thing was just amazing. It took me a long time to read. It is a very long book, and yeah, Thomas Hardy is very detailed when it comes to discussing like the work of the farm and stuff like that, and sometimes I do find that a little bit dry, and I specifically remember it being very, very dry in Tess the Deadvilles because I was a bit younger when I was reading it, and he was just talking in so much detail about farming. So yes, number 2 was Far From Madding Crowd. And then finally we have my favourite book of the year. And it is one of the first books that I read this year. It might have been the second or the third book that I read in 2017, and it is Undying, a Love Story by Michel Faber. It is a poetry collection, and Michel Faber wrote this. He wrote a bit of it before his wife died. She had a terminal illness, and then he wrote the rest as sort of his like grief process after losing her. And this book has just stuck with me so much. So like, the writing style, the turn of phrase, and you just feel his love and sorrow for the loss of his wife just like seeping out of this book as you're reading it, and it's so beautiful. And especially at the end of 2016, I read Grief Is a Thing with Feathers and adored it, and I read Undying, a Love Story about 2 weeks after, just coincidentally, because I'd got that book for Christmas. And I just, it probably is my favourite poetry collection of all time. And I think there's something really special about a poetry collection that is written well and that can make you feel these things. But I think the amount of raw feeling that he put into that poetry collection, it just can't be matched for me. I loved it. I thought it was so fantastic, and it's definitely stuck with me for the whole year. So yeah, that is my favourite book of 2017, though it is very, very closely followed by Far From Madding Crowd. And yeah, Far From Madding Crowd is definitely my favourite fiction of the year. So yes, that was my 2017 in review. This is going to be a very long video and annoying to edit, but hopefully I'm going to be putting it up tomorrow. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!